session we've got, the end of the beginning of our conference, if you like, is our official public launch of the Big History Connecting Knowledge MOOC on Coursera. So after this, we're actually going to, you can see the end of the beginning is our launch celebration and welcome drinks, which will be held at the University Bar, which I think most people know where it is. It's a place where many a refreshing drink has been drunk and a serious thought thunk. But just before we get there, we're going to give you a bit of an idea about what's involved with the MOOC. I'm going to talk just for a couple of minutes about the contributions and some of the context, show you a few minutes, a brief example of the content, and then Tracy Sullivan will explain some of the pedagogical thinking and critical thinking behind the MOOC. So the issue is that, you know, we're here with the Big History Anthropocene Conference, and a number of the discussions have highlighted the importance of education. How do we get, at a societal level, people to embrace the challenge and actually be able to intelligently assess the problems, assess responses, and start to map a way forward? So, drawing on 20 academics from across Macquarie University, we developed the Big History MOOC. I need to thank a few people who have contributed to this. So, from the executive of the university down, from Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic John Simons, Pro Vice-Chancellor Learning and Teaching Sherman Young, Yvonne Breyer, Dr. Yvonne Breyer, Director of Learning and Teaching, the Faculty of Business and Economics, was tremendously committed to this. Michael Rampey, sitting over here, his expertise it shines through in every single video and the production quality of those videos. And Nathan Sollers, Gareth Rhodes, and Kevin Patterson, who assisted Michael, and the 20 academics from across the university whose expertise in the particular disciplines provided a fantastic base for us to zoom in to so many methodologies to start to tell this story. What were our objectives? I mean, let me take a step back. Macquarie is a founding partner in the Big History Project, so we've got some experience in the online space. We've spent the last 5 years turning the Macquarie University undergraduate Big History course into a wonderful online resource for high schools directed to ages 15 and 16 years. And we've seen real success with that. We started with 6 schools back in 2011-2012 school year. 3 years later, we had 600 schools around the world, and this year, over 1,200 schools around the world are teaching the Big History Project course. We've also watched with interest the impact of David Christian's TED Talk, which is now at over 6 million, or getting close to 6 million hits. And so there was a number of drivers for us. One cohort was to think about this transition pathway of actually bringing people into university with some sense of this story, so that you start whatever undergraduate degree you're doing with some of this as basic background knowledge. So you take that into your disciplinary studies with that experience. The second cohort was really a cohort for graduates. So the idea behind the MOOC is actually the first in a series of MOOCs which will form a coherent series of courses, or specialization, on Coursera. So the specialization will be Big History, solving complex problems. So the MOOC is the first step in that process. Last week of September we soft launched, which meant that we hit the button to publish on the course. We'd never used the Coursera platform before, so it was really very much of a test run for us to make sure everything was working. There was no advertising or promotion of any kind, and we wanted to see what was the response. We thought we may have a few hundred people looking at it. I'll give you the figures. We've been fascinated to see that people have actually had to search for this themselves to find it, without any indication or direction that they should search for it. About 1,000 people a week have come across this course. What's really of interest is that 42% of the people that visit the page actually enrol in the course. Then about half of those actually translate to active learners, and by active learners we mean they actually have spent at least an hour engaging with the material in the course. And you can see that there's actually a system of cohorts, which the course runs for 6 weeks. So starting from I really like the look of that curve. It's all in the right direction for us. And what it means is there's barely 2 cohorts that have had time. The second cohort is just finishing. And you can see that in the last week, the number of completes has almost doubled. So there's a lot in the pipeline starting to move through, which is great for us to see. So those numbers are really interesting. In terms of where learners are from, bear in mind that the course it's only in English. It is certainly our plan to take it to other languages, but you can see that there's a very healthy mix of spread by continents and by countries. That's just the cut of the first 16, and a really good mix of developed economies and emerging economies. So that's been great for us to see. And just some stats on gender and age. Men are blue, women are purple, and the Coursera average is grey. And some surprises here. So gender is pretty much average in terms of the interest and usage. What's been interesting has been the age distribution. So lesser proportions in the 18 to 24 and 25 to 34. So that first cohort that we were thinking in terms of preparation for university, I suspect that will change and grow as we start to promote this. And I think our second cohort of graduates seem to be dominating so far in terms of what we were thinking. And I think it's as you see from the next slide, it's also based a result, I think, of the demographic of the users on Coursera, which when I saw this, I was quite surprised. 40% combined master's degrees and bachelor's degrees, and that's 40%. That's a pretty educated cohort accessing the platform. So that was also very interesting for us to have a look at. And to just give you an idea of how it's been received, this has been truly pleasing for us to just put it out there and see what's happened over the last couple of months. 98% likes, 2% dislikes, 80% rating it of 5 stars. So very pleased with that. Some of the reviews, this is great for us to see. So our hunch that this would actually hit a market that people are interested to get familiar with this type of framing story and experience has been borne out so far in the soft launch. So we're very interested to see what happens as we take it further from here. I think, let's see, the last thing I'd want to do is just thank Macquarie University as a whole. They've really got behind this process for us. That's evidenced by the fact that they've provided an international undergraduate scholarship for someone who completes the MOOC and wants to apply to Macquarie University. And I think that will be, that sort of promotion and taking this to students around the world will be important for us in increasing the numbers and awareness in that cohort. Just before I hand over to Tracy, the last thing I want to do is just show you an example of the production quality of the videos. So the week 4 of the course, I believe, is on the origins of writing, and there's a case study attached to that, which is, I think it's actually my favourite video from the course, so I enjoy showing it to you, but it takes about 3 minutes. Let's see if we can...
The walls of the temples are full of hieroglyphs, full of inscriptions, and every hieroglyph in itself is an image, a beautifully executed image. You've got the owl and the sun, and we've got a face, and we've got a throne, we've got the sun rising above the horizon, we've got outstretched arms, etc. But how do we actually read these signs, and how are they organized on this wall? What we can see is that hieroglyphs are often organized in columns, so inscribed in columns, but they have different directions. And so you can write hieroglyphs from left to right, from right to left, and from top to bottom. But how do you start writing? How would you start reading what is on the wall here? And the trick is to know that the living beings, usually the animals, they look at you. So you can see here that there are two directions in the writing. The 3 columns on the right, you would read from left to right, and the 4 columns on the left, you would read starting from the top, from right to left. I can now see that on this pillar that I've got here, I've got 7 columns, but that through the direction of the signs that there are 2 texts there, one on the right comprising 3 columns and one on the left comprising 4 columns. And so I would start reading them individually and then work out from their contents, which one comes first. This one is neat because you can also see how the hieroglyphs are often arranged in a very decorative way. So this here is the name of the king, and you're standing in a doorway and you're looking up at the ceiling, and it is decorated with 2 of the royal titles of Ramesses the Great, and in a decorative manner, they are arranged symmetrically. You read from the middle outward. So you've got the Ankh sign in the middle, and then the signs are repeated in mirror image. And again, it's the orientation of the signs that helps tell you how to read this. Here is an example taken from the fallen obelisk of Queen Hatshepsut in Karnak Temple. And this is part of, you can see, so it's triangular there. It's apart from the very tip of the obelisk. And there it says, and if you apply what we said earlier, the signs are facing us, so I'm looking from left to right here. So the words say, Jed Medu in Amun-Ra, so words spoken by Amun-Ra, Neb Pet, Lord of the Heavens, G-N-E, I have given, Nesti Tawi, the kingship of the 2 lands, and Yaut Tem, and the office of Atum, En Sat-I, to my daughter, and then the name, I'm now in the 3rd column, and then we have in that cartouche, in the name ring, the Mat Ka-Ra, which is the throne name of Queen Hatshepsut herself, and it finishes off with a wish that she may live.
So I hope you can see we're very proud of it and the work that's gone in from the team that's contributed, all the academics that have contributed. It's been a great effort, and I might ask Tracy now to run through some of the pedagogical elements.
All right. I think we all know, as we've heard from David's presentation today, that the content and the story of Big History is innovative, it's compelling, and it's profound. I was having a conversation with someone after David's presentation, and it was their first introduction to Big History. And like many, it was an opportunity to begin to view the world and their place in it in a very different way. It initiates a kind of psychological shift in the way people view themselves and their place in the universe. But its impact is not only in its story and its narrative and its content, it's also in its power as a framework for learning. And Professor Downton, the Vice-Chancellor, talked about that this morning. Its power to produce critical, forward-thinking, future-thinking learners. So what we had to do when we looked at doing the MOOC was, how do we make that balance? How do we balance that innovative content, innovative narrative with that framework for learning and that experience for students and learners? So we thought about what types of thinking do we want to instill in the learners that we're going to come across, or who are going to engage with the MOOC. Now, the first thing we want to have them to engage in the process of visible thinking. Now, as we look around the room here today, this room is full of people who are wonderfully innovative thinkers, future thinkers, who raise and answer complex questions. And one of the things that they do through that process, and one of the things that I'm sure you all do, is you understand your thought process. You understand the process that you go through to come to a conclusion. It engages you, it allows you to have a deeper understanding of your content, increase motivation for learning, and also to be a discerning learner. Once you're aware of your thinking process, you can see opportunities for further learning. You can see opportunities for different ways of thinking. So that's one of the things we wanted to distill in our learners. The other thing that we wanted to engage in was this idea of critical thinking. you can't be a critical thinker until you're aware of how the process of thinking undertakes. So what we wanted to do was help students to engage with big questions, to use the idea of analysing information, to think open-mindedly and to look across disciplines, to be able to connect that knowledge. So what we've done here is we've got 2 levels of lectures. Once we have framework lectures, they're the top level. They allow the big history story, the big history narrative to come through. And as Professor Downton was talking about, this idea of big history providing a map. It provides a map and a scaffold to place knowledge, to place information, to be able to see that big picture. So that's what's happening with the framework lectures. And then we have a level of zooming in lecture. And we'll see I can see several of the academics in the audience today, Michael Gillings and Simon George, who contributed zooming in lectures to the MOOC. We're very grateful for that. And what we get here is that insight into specialist disciplines. So we're seeing how specialist learning can be situated within that framework. We're also seeing there how those connections can be made, how when we look at things from that larger scale and we take a look at that larger scale, we can ask questions that are answered by different disciplines. The other thing too, I think that we're taught a lot is to see the difference in disciplines. We see what separates them. What we're finding here and what we're doing with the MOOC is showing how they complement each other, how they work together. So the combination of the framework lecture, giving the story, with the zooming in and showing how those questions are answered, are engaging with that process. So we looked at what are the course objectives, what are the 3 things that we want learners to get out of this MOOC experience. We want them to be able to identify those connections across disciplines. We wanted them to explain the complexity of our world. So again, as that story empowers learners to re-engage with their understanding of themselves and in the world. And we also wanted them to appreciate the challenges of the future. So it's about being an active learner. It's about engaging with that content with a future thought and how to use that learning going forward. So when we look at the assessment, we've got 3 levels of assessment here. We have a level of content quizzes, so those will be after every video and every module. And what you find here is this is to give students a grounding in the content, so some content knowledge of the big history narrative. We then have claim tester questions. Now, I'm going to talk more about those in a moment and this idea of claim testing, because this is a key pedagogical tool that's used in big history and in the MOOC. And it's this idea of epistemological toolkit. How do we understand claims of knowledge that are made, and how do we make a judgment whether to accept or reject them? And then we have an element of peer review, so a reflective response at the end of the course that allows students to look back, to come up with their idea of how they identify connections across disciplines, how they understand complexity in our world, and how they appreciate the challenges of the future. So I just want to spend a short moment looking at the claim testers. Now, I think in the world that we inhabit today, there's a shift in how we engage with information. We've gone from the need to locate information to the need to navigate overwhelming amounts of information. And then once we've navigated it, we need to assess whether we're going to accept or reject and how we're going to use that information. Now, these claim testers were developed by David Christian and used in his teaching, and they're a very simple but highly sophisticated conceptual toolkit for how to engage with knowledge. And one of the wonderful things about them is that whilst they make thinking processes visible, they also demonstrate how we can undertake critical thinking. So this idea of intuition, when we're confronted with a claim of knowledge, to believe it based on gut instinct. Authority, because a credible source told us that this was true or that this is valid. That it's logical, that there's an application or a systematic reasoning that helps us arrive at that conclusion. And then evidence. Is this claim grounded in concrete, verifiable evidence? And how are we making those claims? And we can even go into deeper arguments about that, or deeper discussions in terms of, say, intuition. If someone is a geologist and they're responding to a claim made in their field, are they doing that from intuition, or is that intuition coming from their expert knowledge? So these kinds of ideas are built throughout the course. So it's about engaging with that narrative, but also creating meaningful learning and thinking about how we engage with those questions. We want to think that through the MOOC, students are going to be able to get an appreciation of big history and its content, but they're also going to have an understanding of how to raise complex problems, how to see how people from different disciplines and different learning areas address those complex problems, and where the synergies come through those disciplines in answering those complex problems. Now, the other thing that we've done with the MOOC is it's on an on-demand platform, and it works with this idea of automated cohorts. So I think everyone would understand, and I think everyone's experienced, that oftentimes when we come together in conferences such as this, a lot of the most meaningful learning and meaningful engagement happens at lunch, or it happens in morning tea when everyone gets to talk, or at the drinks afterwards where you get to discuss, you get to talk to each other. So the idea of putting this in cohorts and having it in an on-demand model is that students and learners can then learn together. They will go at the same pace in a cohort, and they'll be able to engage in discussion. They'll be able to examine those questions, look at them from different perspectives and learn from each other. That was also part of the motivation for using the peer assessment concept. So, that's basically an overview of how the Big History MOOC has functioned in terms of a pedagogical level within the MOOC platform. You can come on here online and you can enrol now. It's there for you all to enrol, and I believe you have some information about it too that has been handed out to you.